Hello my friends, and welcome back to another watercolor tutorial. Today we are painting another forest walk, but this one is going to be, or the aim for it is for it to be very fall themed. So it's going to be yellow and orange galore. So I'm going to start picking up some white watercolor. And there's basically just going to be not a hole, that's not what I'm trying to say, but like a tunnel that brightens as you walk through this forest. And so the tunnel is going to exit somewhere around here. So I'm just going to paint that as the brightest spot. And I'm going to make that circle bigger than I want it to be in the end, because I can guarantee you that when I paint the yellow around it, it'll sort of overtake. So that's what I'm doing. I'm painting a yellow over top. And then we're just going to progressively get darker or brighter with the yellow as we go around. And this is not wet on wet, because I know someone's gonna ask. If it was wet and wet, then I would have told you cover your paper with water, but it's not. So the reason why I'm not doing wet on wet is because lately my piece of paper dries before I can do anything anyway, and then it creates more problems. And secondly, it's way more intense when you do not do wet on wet. Like the color is more intense, so you don't have to pick up as much paint. I reused the tape, and I have green on this tape, and now it's my own fault, but and I just bought a 6-pack from Costco, so this tape is going to last me a long time. So it's not that I have a lack of tape, it's just it's already cut in exactly the shape that I need it, so it's less effort for me to do anything than just reuse the squares of the frames that I create out of tape. Okay, so this is kind of the base that we want. I do want way more orange up top here, even some brown, I would say. So we can pick up a little orange and drop that. I can already see that the center has dried, unfortunately, which is problematic because as soon as I do that, it's going to... This is the problem I've been having in really all my paintings recently. The background dries before I have a chance to finish what I want to do. And this is a very recent problem. I'd never had this issue before. Even when we moved into this house, I don't remember having this issue in the beginning. So I don't know if lately the air is just much drier and I'm not really noticing, but anyhow, I'm gonna switch now to, this is my size 3, but any like smaller round brush will do. And I'm gonna take brown watercolor. Again, everything is still wet here, I just re-wet it. And we're gonna be creating the base for our really huge deciduous trees that are growing in this gorgeous forest. So I'm gonna have a few trees here. There's gonna be 1, 2, and then a huge one here. I'm not too worried about things looking like perfect because we're gonna go back later on, adjust, There's going to be a lot of brown, yellow, orange, maybe a little red. So this is what I like about these kinds of paintings that take a lot longer to paint. I will say that. Like I just did this one, which I'm assuming is going to be released the week before this one is. And it's a similar painting where it's like a forest walk and it's a dense forest and it takes forever because it's just layer after layer. And I don't mind because it's very enjoyable. Like these are the paintings that I enjoy painting because there isn't a rush. And you slowly see it coming together, and then at the end you're like, wow, all of these layers really came together into this beautiful painting. So big fan of these kinds of paintings. They do take patience though, I will say that. Something I'm not big on. So here you want to just imagine like your pathway is funneling towards this tunnel. So I'm painting little tree trunks, thinner and shorter the further we go. You can even have one, like a tiny one going right through. Again, this is the first layer. You can always go back, fix, adjust. That's the beauty of paintings with just a baloney amount of layers. That didn't make sense. Like these trees that I'm picturing are like these massive oaks, maybe they're oaks, like super thick trunks with enormous branches coming off of them. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. We just want to create a base for them so that we have something to work off of as we go further on in our painting. If we don't, then it was kind of like I was explaining in the previous tutorial. Oh my gosh, I'm happy I noticed that was out of frame. I hope that wasn't like that for a long time, because I did that with a painting about a month ago and y'all were not very happy about that, understandably so, but it would just really suck if I spent like an hour on a tutorial that I really enjoyed and then it was out of frame. I wish I had a little alarm that would go off and tell me I'm out of frame when I am. Anyway, this forest floor is going to be covered with leaves, so I'm not sure whether to make the effort into painting a path, like a dedicated path, or if I just take the lazy route and make it all one forest floor. I have to think about it a little bit. So right now I'm taking orange and I'm just plopping that down to create a little bit more texture in that forest floor. Yellow, popping that down. Brown. I always struggle figuring out how to create texture in these sorts of situations. Like a forest floor has, if you take a picture, it's like 1,000 speckles on the ground and they're all little leaves, assuming it's like a picture in the fall. And I always struggle trying to figure out how to recreate that in a painting. It's not my forte, so we might end up just going with the pathway because that's a very simple way to achieve exactly what I'm describing right now. So this is probably pretty dry, if not mostly dry. So I'm gonna go ahead and just paint on another layer of the tree trunks. Actually, no. We're gonna hold up, take a step back for a moment. I wish I had thought of this beforehand. When this was still wet, I should have arched this. So let's try to do that just super lightly. I took watered down brown here. And yeah, I'm gonna try to arch these trees over. Just to create this illusion that you're that you're walking into a tunnel of trees that are arching in over one another. Something like that. It's a little bit more what I had in mind, but anyway, we can touch that more up later. I just wanted a base. Okay. This is always a struggle for me when I do these like infinite layered paintings. You really have to figure out what needs to be put down first so that it works with like layer 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's easier often to go light to dark or in the distance to up close, because those two sort of work together. Obviously, things that are closer to the viewer are going to appear darker, larger, overlap the things in the back. So it's good to start with the background items first. It's not always that way. And like you might, like part of one side might overlap another part, even though it's further back. It's so dependent on the composition of your painting and what you're trying to achieve. And I don't always know what I'm trying to achieve. So I just gotta keep going until it looks okay. But generally, starting with the lighter colors is the best bet, because then you can add darker colors to add shadows, variety, etc. So that is just what I'm gonna stick with. So for instance, I'm gonna start with yellow here. I'm gonna start creating this like dense leafy foliage that's going to be overtaking these tree trunks. And that's when I start getting into the whole like, should I paint the tree trunks first? Probably. So then I stop myself. Like now I'm think, yeah, paint your tree trunks first, because the leaves are overlapping and overtaking the tree trunks. So apologies for the confusion, but it's part of the process, especially because I don't pre-paint my paintings like a lot of watercolor artists do on here. I just go with the flow. And this is just part of that process of going with the flow. You don't always know how things are going to turn out. I really don't like when I paint deciduous trees like forks like that. It always looks so bad in my opinion. So I try to cover it up somehow. What happened here? I don't know. The other thing with these longer tutorials, like I said, the previous one I showed you was an hour long, is that I only have a set amount of time to paint. So if I have an hour, I can either use that hour to paint 2 tutorials, or I could use that hour to paint 1. And in the end, I still just have that hour. So it's a lot more tempting to paint shorter tutorials that have much less steps. They're not necessarily easier, they require less time, less effort, less focus in general. But I do like to mix these ones in seldomly, because I like painting these kinds of tutorials. They're the kind where I just get stuck in the painting, and it's a lot more fun for me than trying to follow like a rigid reference and then getting upset that mine doesn't look like what I'm looking at. These are more free to just do whatever feels good in that moment, and like whatever, if your paintbrush goes somewhere where you don't want it to, you can adjust accordingly. Especially with leafy foliage, like you could really do a ton with that. It's also hard to verbalize what I'm, like each step that I'm doing, because as you saw just very recently, I said, okay, now we're going to be doing this, and then I changed my mind. So yeah, it's definitely a process that you just go through. Like you kind of go on your own journey through it. I just lead you in the direction. So now I'm like, okay, I need to stop painting all of these tree trunks, because all of the foliage here, I need to fill that in first before I paint these kind of foreground tree trunks. So this is what I mean about like stopping, adjusting, figuring out where you're going with things. Now I need to find one of my, where's my paintbrush? My toddler was in here rearranging my stuff. I think it's this brush that I have. It's a size 8 by Grumbacher. It's much more stiff than my grabby brushes, but I love it for that reason, because I can stipple very easily. Definitely not what it's meant for, and you can tell because like I have strands sticking out everywhere, but I believe I bought a replacement for this one already. So like this one was meant to be tossed a while ago, and I just keep using it until it's truly done. Anyways, now we're gonna do what I wanted to do a few turns ago, I guess you could say. So stippling is great for deciduous trees. It's like the way to go in my opinion, because you cover a huge amount of what would you call it, volume, with not very much effort, and it's pretty realistic looking. So the way I do it is I pick up pigment and then I dab my paintbrush onto a paper towel so that a lot of the moisture is gone. If you don't do that, then when you stipple, it won't be like all these randomly placed little dots everywhere. Instead, it'll just be globs of water, and they'll turn into bigger globs and look sort of like this. So definitely dab off that excess water if this is the route that you're going. And as I go upwards, I'm going to start transitioning. See, I just did the glob thing into more of an orange. Even you can add some brown in there too. Oops. The orange is very intense, so it's easy for it to overtake the yellow. So I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of brown. I mean, it's doing the same thing anyway. And this is why we created that background of color first. If we didn't, and we were just stippling this color onto here, we would have a white background, and that would be really hard to fill. We definitely wouldn't be creating the vision that we're like entering a tunnel. It would look more forced and definitely more amateur. And if we can very easily make things look more professional, why don't we? Right? That's what I think, at least. So stipple, stipple, stipple. I think I'm going to just quickly see. I have this eggshell yellow color in my palette. It's like part of the specialty colors, and I used it in a previous tutorial, and it was so, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, so pigmented. But I have to be careful that I'm not putting on blobs. So the idea behind this is I want it to stand out against the darker colors. Yeah, it's so tricky not to create blobs. It's easy to create blobs, so just be really mindful of your stippling technique. We are going to painting these very dark trunks, but I want to have, just in case there is an overlap somewhere, I do want some leaves there as a background to make just the whole process easier. I'm taking some red now. I'm being a little bold. Okay. The other issue is if your paper is already a bit too wet, it'll create those blobs I was talking about anyway. So you may have to just wait for it to dry and then continue. I'm gonna create like the part closest to the viewer, the most foregrounded area here. I'm going to darken that as well. Even add some brown to it. I need to be careful that I don't overdo it with the brown, because right now it's starting to look a bit much, a bit chaotic. This is the stage where I'm like, what is happening? Am I gonna mess this up completely? Because there's enough detail that you can say, okay, are we like almost done? But there's not really enough detail where you can say this is a complete and nice painting. So yeah, I'm trying to oh man, sorry, marketplace people are a different kind of people. Oh, another thing I just thought of, and see, this makes me happy. This is when I have the foresight about these kinds of details, it really makes the final product come together. We're gonna have a silhouette of one person, maybe two people walking here. So there's gonna be a tiny brown or darker shadow coming from them. So I'm just painting two shadowy blobs here. It's not a big deal. We totally could have fixed that later, but why not do it now? Okay. Where are we in our process here? I think we're gonna have to wait for this to dry so that we can paint on the really dark chunks. So I'm gonna take brown. I'm just gonna stick with brown without any added black, which I usually do, because I want the insides of the trees to be lighter than the outside, because clearly light is coming from the center, so it's kind of gonna illuminate outwards. So this side will be lighter than this side. Yeah, I don't know if my hands were even on the screen there, but okay. Ah, this makes me nervous. Oh my gosh, I almost dropped my paintbrush full of brown paint right in the center there. It would definitely not be the first time I've done something annoying like that. I do have trouble making these huge deciduous trees look realistic. It's definitely not something I'm naturally good at. The base I figured out, you just kind of work with it. You just blend it into the surrounding situation. So I'm gonna take a bit of orange, brown, mix it together, and then just kind of do this. Blend it outwards. Something like that. Okay. And then the tree beside it, it's going to be even thicker. And I want to leave the ever so smallest gap between these two, so it looks like there's two trees. We can always paint like a very thin yellow line in between afterwards as well. And we can make this one a tad bit darker, which will also help us distinguish between the two, but it always helps to just do it properly, and then you don't have to worry about doing it later. So that's a tank of a tree right there. And it should be a little bit, it should sit lower, obviously, than the previous one because it's closer to the viewer, so it appears larger. And then I'm gonna have another huge one here, but it's barely gonna be visible to the, like it's barely gonna be on the piece of paper. I've seen paintings where like one detail extends beyond the pretty taped borders, and I love that look. But I only thought of it now, and I just don't feel like trying to accommodate for that. Anyway, this one has black added to it, so that's how I'm going to distinguish it between these guys. Otherwise, it would just be chaos for me. I might leave this. No, I won't. blend these puppies together. Something like that. When I do a green forest and I need to blend the base of a deciduous tree, I love adding green moss to it. It really makes it really pretty, but this is obviously not that situation, so I'm not going to do that. I wonder, you know what? I wonder how it would look, like a super yellow orange painting with a bit of green moss. I'm sure that color, that extra pop of color would look nice. But I don't know if I want to do that experiment today. Okay, so on this side, I'm going to try and make these trees a better version of whatever the heck this is, this fork situation. I'm gonna try. The key word is try. So it's gonna be another really big tree, nice and thick. And we're gonna have one branch that right away just splits off. Another branch that kind of goes this way, and then like a little chunk comes off of there. And then more like a solitary, I just stuck my hand in the paint. A solitary, or leader, I think that's what it's called, that kind of goes like this. And then a part coming off the leader and another part coming off the leader. And then another part coming off here somewhere. I'm not the best at those kinds of details on deciduous trees. I just haven't painted enough of them. This will mostly be covered up in a moment because we are going to be painting another huge deciduous tree here. I just have to blend this base in before it dries and becomes a little bit more difficult to do that. Something like that. And yeah, I'm gonna take this one's gonna be like super dark. I'm gonna add quite a bit of black to the brown. Still want it to have a hint of brown, but I want it to stick out and look like it's really in the forefront. And it's gonna kind of go at an angle like this. So it's gonna start off not really being in the frame as much, and then curve. That was maybe too much of a curve. I'm making it a tad bit thicker. I don't know, my friends. These trunks need definition. Because right now they look quite flat. That is always my issue with these guys, but we will figure it out in a moment. There's just still a lot that we need to do to make this painting come together. I'm going to just define this guy again, make him its own entity. And then I'm gonna take a bit of this random tan color I have, but like white would probably work. Some kind of nude color would work. and I'm gonna add it to the inner side of the tree to kind of give our trees that glow that I was talking about, that reflection. This is still not bright enough, so I'm gonna add a bit of white and then blend it in. We might end up just adding white acrylic paint to make that happen, because this ain't working how I wanted it to. Okay, I suppose we can tinker with the trunks in a bit. I'm gonna focus on the leaves. I know our trunks are still wet. I need them to be dry so that we can stipple on more leaves. So I'm gonna try to work with the bits that are dry first. So I'm gonna pick up that eggshell yellow that I mentioned earlier that I had, because I really liked the opacity of it. It should provide a nice contrast against, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, can you imagine if we didn't have this background of color to already work with? This would be a bit of a nightmare, trying to make fit all this in and make it look pretty. Where are we here? So this is inspired by Mark Tisdale. And then I'm gonna take the orange, start stippling that on. I am gonna add a bit of red eventually, because the orange is starting to kind of just blend a bit too much, like into the yellow, and it's starting to lose its vibrancy and contrast. So if we add a bit of red, it'll kind of revive what was lost there, I hope. So yeah, I'm gonna pick up that red. I need a more intense red than that. I don't know, guys. We're coming to the end of this, and I'm just not feeling the same satisfaction that I was feeling with that other woodland painting. It's definitely missing quite a bit. I'm gonna add little branches sort of scattered amongst the leaves, if you will. seemingly unconnected to anything specific, but at least it'll give a bit of definity and something darker amongst all this blurred unknown. Now, another thing we're going to do eventually is add an opening, like a gate opening here, that will help solidify some of this unknown. We definitely have to do something about these trunks. They don't really have enough of anything to them. Like, they're just very flat. So I'm going to take this nude color and add a bit of that. Maybe white. I just need to stick to white, I think. And then back to the brown or black to add like texture lines. What I did in the other painting is that I added a little bit of silver detail, and I felt that that really added to the painting. I might end up just using the silver as the details because nothing else seems to be popping the way I want it to. I need to deal with this forest floor too because it's still looking very undefined. I'm gonna stipple the heck out of it. Should have just done that from the beginning. Bit of yellow. Pop some orange in there. That already looks better. Possibly some brown. These need to be dealt with. These seemingly ending in nowhere tree trunks. Yeah, let me just quickly take how we're at, like 44 minutes, I think. I really need to wrap this up. Silver. And I'm just trying to focus that on the inner part of the tree. I should have separated the lines rather than doing like one solid line. So let me just blend some of that out. It's a lot of trial and error, guys. Okay, big thing we need to add is the gate, and maybe I won't do the silhouettes of the people, but I do feel like that would add some definity to this very scattered painting at the moment. So I'm gonna take brown and lighten it significantly with yellow or orange or whatnot, because I want the light from this path to really illuminate the fence post. So I'm gonna, can I go super, is that blurry? I hope that's not blurry. I'm gonna paint one side of the fence post. So, oh, it's always the moment of truth. I don't want to mess the heck out of this up. And that is way too dark. I wanted way more orangey yellow than what this turned out to be, so. I am going to, do I have, yes, I do. Okay, sorry, I have to sharpen my pencil because I want to pencil out the other side of the fence first so that I don't mess this up. So I'm gonna paint the other side of the fence like in line with this. It's going to be here. So same height, same size. But it's gonna be, because the gate is going to be like swung open, it's gonna come down at a slight angle. So the end of it's gonna be about here. And then it's gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, this and cross. So let's try, I'm gonna switch brushes for this one. And I'm just gonna paint it in yellow or orange, and then I can always darken it because this is way darker than I wanted it to be. I might end up just painting this fence black because I do want it to be a statement. And right now it looks a little bit like it's fading into the trees, or like it's being hidden by the trees, and that's not the look I was going for. I'm just continuing that fence. It sort of will fade somewhere into that forest. That's looking okay. So I do think that adding a silhouette of people would enhance this photo significantly, because that fence is still not dark. I want it to be lighter because it's within the tunnel of light. So before we move on to the people, I'm gonna take silver watercolor and just brighten these fence posts a bit so everything is all happy and illuminated. And now we can focus on the people. So I'm a little bit nervous about this This is, if I had the foresight, what I would have done is printed a silhouette of the people. And then just traced it on. Sorry, I know I said we're doing people now, but I just realized when this yellow dried, it totally looks like there's nothing there, so I'm just going over. Okay, that's a little better. Okay. Yeah, usually I would just trace a silhouette. Not usually, I've done that sometimes, but because this was not exactly planned, I'm going to try and freehand the silhouette. And a few tutorials ago, I painted these like abstract walking people, but they ended up looking like people in robes or monks, and I don't know, that's just not the look I'm going for here. So let's hope this works for us. So I'm gonna start out with drawing this petticoat, and man is going to be walking with his lovely wife. I hope you can see that. I'm actually quite tempted to just draw this with a marker, like fill it in with a marker, because it would be so much easier. But we are gonna stick with watercolor. Don't feel ashamed if that's what you want to do instead. I was just giving I'm giving that suggestion that you can by all means do that. And this should not be all black. I don't know why I picked up just black. This should be black with like yellow mixed into it. It sometimes helps to leave random gaps in between what you're painting. It looks intentional sometimes, like these gaps between the legs and the top and between the arm and this neck part. You can always fill it in. That's the thing. You can always fill it in, but it's a lot harder to take away what you've already painted, especially when it's like black on yellow. So keep that in mind. So for instance, here I'm gonna try and paint the head more of a yellow tint. Nah, that's not really working for me. See, way easier to darken it. Okay, so my phone just reached its max capacity for memory, so I'm gonna try and finish this as quickly as possible because I tried to delete as much as I could, but I don't know what happened to all the memory on my phone. Like, what the heck is on there? Anyway, so yeah, we're just painting the second figure here. I apologize for the crying in the background. My husband is there with my daughter. But whenever she wakes up from her nap, this is every day, she's in this mood where we can't really figure out why she's crying. And it takes a while for her to just calm down enough to eat her second lunch. So that's what's happening there. And it's every day, so it's not like it's, oh, she's teething or something. We really don't know what the heck causes it. But any whoosies. Oh, I'm not too unhappy with these silhouettes. The only thing I'm gonna do, in case this turns off again, I'm gonna add a little bit of silver to some parts of the silhouettes, just like the sides, to make it look shiny like the trees are shiny. And then that will be it in case this turns off. So that is basically it. I'm gonna call this it because I have no phone memory left. So we're gonna peel the tape to reveal our painting. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this, but it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think, what you would have done differently. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon if that is something that interests you and you want to see more of these kinds of tutorials. Thank you.